If this episode seems a little bit rehearsed, I want to say this is our 4th time trying to record this episode of the podcast.
Welcome to Content Creating, friends.
We are probably the last people to be learning from it. Because the first time we got very passionate about what we're about to talk about because it was still very fresh. And we were like, we can't release that episode. Like, it was too much of us just like griping. It was way too long. We were getting fired up. Then the second time, it was something along the same lines. It was just scattered. It wasn't a good take. And then the third time, we thought we nailed it. But Chris forgot to hit record on the soundboard. So you have a video with no noise.
And I know some of you will comment, release the fired up version. Maybe we will. No, probably not.
No, but I think it probably served us well that you kind of have to like work it out of your system. It's like, you know, how people say, if you have something to say to somebody, write a letter to them, but never send it. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
So, dear Honduras, you ticked me off.
Oh, yeah. So listen, if you're new here, I'm Chris.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is What No One Tells You. And it's a podcast all about traveling, whether we interview our friends who travel differently than us or it's about our travels. And this episode is about Honduras and Nicaragua and our time traveling through both of them on the Pan American Highway. And if you follow along our YouTube journey, you know some of this story, but we're going to go into the background and tell you the nitty gritty behind the scenes version. But before we get into all of that, this is the favorite part, my favorite part, Sarah's favorite part of the show is where we ask and plead with you to leave a 5-star review, maybe a comment or a review. You don't have to leave a 5-star. I'm not begging you to do that, but if you did that, that would be so nice.
All right, moving on. So first up, Honduras. So, you know, the podcast is called What No One Tells You, and I think today, what no one told us about Honduras is that we were going to get scammed. Like, I don't know.
Hardcore scammed.
We know that scams are just part of traveling in general. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. But oh my goodness, Honduras was just like learning experience, curveball the whole day.
And there's a difference between being scammed and a tuk-tuk and you're being charged over, you're getting an overpriced charge for, going somewhere, or maybe you're getting a really expensive drink. Like there's those types of scams. I remember getting scammed in Baja, Mexico for a fish taco, and I'm still upset by it.
I've never paid so much for a taco.
But this scam was a whole different level, and it's not like that. So
it's bureaucracy. Like, it is just part of Honduras in general. It's a corrupt country in parts right now. Like, I'm not saying there's not good there. There is, but it's got corruption issues.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that day.
Yeah.
So there's this day on the Pan American where most people, not everybody, but a lot of travelers like ourselves, they will go from El Salvador all the way through Honduras and cross into Nicaragua, or vice versa, all in a day. And the reason is because what there is to see in that section of Honduras, there isn't much there. Mm-hmm. A lot of what is most appealing about Honduras is like much further east, like towards the Caribbean. So most people cross 2 borders in a day. There's a lot of stress going into it with Nicaragua. Like everybody warned us, like Nicaragua, you could be there for 3 to 8 to 10 hours. They may confiscate all sorts of things for you. They will x-ray your van, like all this thing, like all these horror stories about Nicaragua. So we were like getting ready for this day. We were kind of skipping over. We researched Honduras, but everybody's like, oh, it's a breeze.
It's super easy.
But I think that's like in contrast to Nicaragua. So that morning we woke up early at sunrise. We were parked on like this lovely older couple's private property on a beach in El Salvador, which is absolutely lovely.
Stunning beach.
So beautiful. And we began our 1 hour drive to the border of Honduras. Got out of El Salvador, easy peasy. They were so nice, so easy. And then we found ourselves in Honduras.
And what made the scam worse, or we didn't even realize the scam was happening, was when we were crossing into Honduras, the government official handed us over to this other gentleman who we thought was working for the Honduran government. And, when you go through some of these borders, a lot of times you'll experience helpers, and we've used those helpers before. And sometimes they're just people there who are at the border and you pay them and then they help you with all the paperwork. They tell you where to go. They do all of this stuff.
That's one of those things, like a lot of overlanders are really adamant about, like, don't use those people. And I understand some people probably can scam you. Some people may not be nice. But for people like us who are not fluent in Spanish, like we know enough to get by. Like we can understand what people are saying. Like we can get around. When somebody approached us, if they seemed nice and we asked them their price and it was doable, usually we're talking like $10 to $20 for them to help us for an hour or two to get us through.
And it saved us so much time.
We had no problem. We ended up talking and like getting inside scoops of where to go. They're people's favorite recommendations. Like you get to know a local, you're helping somebody's like small business. Specifically like heading into Guatemala, the kid that we worked with there, I don't know if he was more than 18 years old. No, he was probably like 20. He was young kid, super nice, giving us all of his favorite recommendations. Like this happens at every border. But Honduras was different. Like we should have seen this scam coming a mile away. But in the moment, I think we were just like,
yeah,
we were just like amped up, ready to get the day over with. I hate to say that, but like we knew that getting through Honduras was going to be a stretch. It's just
there's a lot of moving,
that day.
a lot of moving parts. And then even coming from El Salvador was pretty structured and quiet.
I loved entering El Salvador.
El Salvador was so low key. Like we love El Salvador, but then as soon as you cross that bridge, it is like a night and day difference. You know, just cars backfiring, yelling, people running out in front of you. It is such a chaotic scene, and so you're almost kind of overwhelmed. And listening to this guy, follow this guy, you're like, all right, I've got to follow this guy because I don't know what we're doing or how we're going to get there.
It was a lot. Like even watching the footage back in the video, if you watch that vlog, I can see it now. I can see the scam happening. I can see the discrepancies and what's going on around me. But in the moment, like I think I was just so focused on other things that I wasn't watching. I just missed it. And that happens. Huge lesson learned. But I guess the gist of it is like we got scammed in the sense that they were like trying to charge us for extra things. What happened exactly?
So they were trying to charge us for extra things. They were telling us that we needed to get our title for our car notarized, and in order to do that, we had to pay, hundreds of dollars. And I'm like, this doesn't seem right, and I know it's not right. And then on top of that, there was this confusing part where we had read online that Kramer, our dog, would not be allowed to exit Honduras unless you get the permit right there. And they kept trying to tell us, no, you don't have to get the permit. And we kept putting up a fight. No, we have to get the permit because we don't have to drive all the way back to El Salvador to do all this. And so we ended up having to go to El Salvador illegally across the bridge
on a tuk-tuk.
And so we finally got the permit, and then the price just kept going up. Like the fees just kept going up and up. And it ended up with me being in the back room with this guy, and he was essentially threatening me like, hey, if we don't pay, they're going to put us all in jail, or like, they're not happy about this. And I'm like, good, like, let's just go back to El Salvador. And that, it diffused the situation. We got out of there and we got the paperwork that we needed. And you could go to our YouTube and watch that entire video. It's stressful for us to even think about or talk about, but
it was part of it.
It's just a part of it. And there's just a lot happening. And in Central America and these specific countries, a lot of times when you park somewhere, you will automatically have guys just randomly show up and they'll say, hey, we helped you park and all that. And so
they want a tip.
They'll
say they're like watching your car. And sometimes they do. Sometimes they really do. And the tip is totally worthwhile. These guys were trading off and like they weren't even watching. Like I saw them not watching. And nor did I ever approve them to watch my car.
And so there was so much confusing things happening. And
much confusing things.
Yeah. So sorry. So there were so many confusing elements to this story. And then even when we walked inside to talk to the official people who were dressed the same as this gentleman, they would just roll their eyes and they wouldn't help, and nobody was helpful there. And so it just ended up being this entirely stressful situation to where we just wanted to get out. Thankfully, we got the paperwork we needed. We, got scammed out a little money, but not a lot. And
we're talking $20.
Yeah.
Which is good money in Honduras.
Yeah, it's good money.
But I want to clear something up because we did get, I don't want to say accused, but we did a couple times in the comment section on our video of this border crossing in Honduras. They're like, you shouldn't have been trying to sneak Kramer in.
No.
And never were we ever trying to sneak Kramer in. In fact, I paid for the paperwork to get Kramer into Honduras, went to the vet and everything, and did everything I thought was correct.
No, the people in Honduras wanted us to sneak him in.
And it was like, no, we're not doing that because I don't want to get across the border and then have to bribe somebody because I'm not paying a bribe. Like, I won't do that.
And we are so thankful that we went with our gut and listened to people online too about this, because when we were finally trying to exit Honduras 2.5 hours later, they were asking for that paperwork. And if we hadn't have had that paperwork, we would have had to drive the 2.5 hours back to El Salvador to get it.
Yeah. So if you listening to this are probably somebody who's never going to be driving through Honduras. So let's just pull back for a second. Like, story time over, I guess. Lesson learned here. Like, if you're just a traveler and you're like, I never want to do that. Also, why are you guys doing that? Doesn't sound like it's worthwhile. It is worthwhile to us. This was just a really bad experience. We knew that this kind of scam is a possibility. We've just been really fortunate and haven't had to deal with it so far. But if you're a traveler and you're going to travel, know that scams are just a real part of it. Like, be discerning and try to figure out who's what, ask questions, and go with your gut. Like, this is the only time I can think of in Central America or Latin American, like anywhere down there, that I felt unsafe. It was one of those few times I was like, this is not good.
No.
Like, Chris was in the back corner with some guy. I didn't know where he was, though. Kramer and I were in the car watching it because I thought somebody was going to break into the car. People were like watching me. Like, it was very unsafe. Like, and then, we told you about those parking attendants who help you. They were not the same guys. Like, we have video footage of when we pulled up, there was nobody there. And then they walked up as we were leaving. They're like, I've been watching your car. And they were demanding a tip and they were cussing at me and like flipping me off. And I was like looking under our tires thinking that may have thrown nails underneath it. Cause that's like a thing people do. Like, if you don't pay them a tip, they'll put nails into your tires and pop them. Or like, I was really concerned. Like, this is the only time I remember thinking like, I need to stay in the back and just like hunker down because I don't want somebody harassing me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that whole experience really tainted our view on Honduras, which is unfortunate because I know that there's always something good and beautiful out of everywhere that we go and visit. And that's true of Honduras, but it tainted our view. We were like, we just need to get out of here. So we beelined it to the other side of Honduras to get out, which was about 2.5-3 hours long. And then that border crossing was very easy. Leaving Honduras was super quiet. The only strange thing was that there was just a naked woman inside the office. Like,
completely naked. Like, I'm not talking like she was missing a top or bottoms.
No, she was just naked.
She was completely naked. And everybody was just acting like they didn't even say it.
Just
like
another day.
Nothing happening.
Just another day.
It was really sad, actually, because she was clearly on drugs. And gosh, obviously Honduras did not hire us to promote their country. And I really hate this because, like, I grew up with a girl who was from Honduras. And while her experience there wasn't great either, there's still things she loved about Honduras because it was home. And so I was going into it thinking of her and I was like, oh, there's going to be good here. And I know there's good there. We just didn't happen to see it that day. And it's unfortunate that our plan was to go all the way through just because I think even if it hadn't been our plan, if we had been planning to stay overnight, I think we probably would have just gone all the way through because it was that rough.
We would have gone. So, and then entering Nicaragua.
Oh, wait, we stopped twice in Honduras. One was for ice cream.
Because we needed it after that stressful entrance.
Ice cream and then like Cokes.
Yeah.
Like ice cold Coke on a hot day. Those are like our two things in Central America. Like, you can always find a Coke somewhere. But we stopped for ice cream and then we stopped at DHL.
Oh, yeah. DHL. So here's the thing about entering Nicaragua, that you cannot bring a drone inside Nicaragua. They're very, very strict on that. They will take it away. You could get arrested. Like, there's a lot of different things that could happen if you bring a drone inside the country. So there is this one DHL store inside Honduras that deals with overlanders just like us.
And they see us all the time.
They say
multiple a week.
Multiple a week. And so essentially what you have to do is take your drone, put it in the box, ship it from DHL from Honduras, and ship it to Costa Rica. Because if Nicaragua finds it, you will get in trouble. And so that's what we did. We shipped our drone.
But it's a little more complicated than that. Like, you have to, Nicaragua, so to ship it, you have to take the lithium batteries out because they're lithium batteries. So So you take those out, and then like at Nicaragua, they'll find the batteries and think that you're also hiding the drone. So not only do you have to like explain to them like, no, I shipped it, here's the batteries, but also here's the receipt. And then some people go so far as to take a picture with the DHL worker and then handing the drone over to prove that, hey, look, I shipped this drone. It's not in my car. You quit searching me.
So we couldn't ship the batteries, but we made sure to ship the remote and the drone in the box.
Yeah,
and
those were gone.
And so and Nicaragua, was hyped up to us as being so difficult and hard. And it's
intense.
It's intense, but it was kind of almost a cakewalk compared to Honduras for us.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Night and day, yeah.
We got to Nicaragua, and I'm not lying when I say I was really nervous. Like, that's, I think, why I was kind of on edge when things started going wrong in Honduras. It was like, this isn't even the one we're supposed to be hyped up about. Like, it was supposed to be Nicaragua. Like, everybody's, really concerned about that. So when we got there, like, yes, it's chaos. Like, there's a man like waving you down the sidewalk, because as an RV, you don't go to the truck line or the car line. So they like put us on a sidewalk going over a bridge. So I'm just narrow, tiny little 8-foot wide sidewalk.
Oh yeah.
And you're driving. He's just like waving you down like a plane. So I'm driving down, and then we stop, and then we get out and we start going inside. And it's not really labeled like step A, step B, step C. Like, usually the thing you do is like you check out of one country, you check into another country, you check your dog in, and then you get your vehicle checked in.
Mm-hmm.
So like you get your passport stamp, essentially the dog in, and then your truck is in. I could not figure out where was what, but Nicaragua in general was just like pretty easy going. And maybe it was a time of day we hit. We came in at the very end of the day. It was like 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night. The people who were working on duty there were like all gossiping. Like, they were just talking about their friends. They were watching TV. Like, the girl who was like interviewing us to check off our passports was seriously sitting there watching a YouTube video as she was like stamping the passport.
So Nicaragua, like, they searched the van pretty intense, or they searched the truck pretty intensely. They made sure, like, we had heard that you're not supposed to bring big knives or big, kitchen knives in there. And so Sarah put knives and any sharp object in the sink, and you could tell the lady was like, why the heck did this American?
She looked at them.
She did?
But like anything that could like be considered like a weapon. Like, I was reading where people had like little kitchen knives, like not like cutting knives. I'm talking about like things you eat with, like utensils. They had those confiscated, which I think is probably really extreme. I'm not sure who they ticked off in the office to have those taken away. But the thing is like, I was thinking like anything that could be considered a weapon, like pepper spray, scissors, like everything. I just put them in Ziploc bags and put it in the sink. So you want to make everything visible. I opened up all the cabinets in the truck. I pulled out our binoculars. Binoculars are not allowed. Oh, you wanted to the binoculars.
No, well, hang on. There was one item that caused so much fuss for us that we had to stay there for a little extra because they had to check it out.
My binoculars?
The binoculars.
Oh, yeah. Binoculars aren't allowed. I knew this, though. I did.
Well, and so the reason why our binoculars got caught was, one, they're binoculars, and two, they're looking for binoculars with night vision on them.
And I think some of them can't even be like over so much distance.
Which makes me wonder, I'm like, what are you hiding? Like, what am I trying to see?
Nicaragua has a tough history. I mean, it was communist not that long ago. Like, it's definitely like they've had some political unrest and civil unrest in the last few years. I don't remember when exactly. I want to say like 2022. It's been recent. Yeah, it's been recent.
Yeah.
Anyway, they've had some political unrest. But binoculars, anything that's like militaristic, they don't deal with.
So we were sitting inside this government office waiting for her binoculars to be checked out.
Because I'm in my burden era.
And so we're waiting there, and then all of a sudden, this big security guard. I mean,
he's a big dude.
He was a big guy. Big guy walks in, and he looks at Sarah and points to her, and then he's like, "Come here." He's like, "Photo." And he made Sarah pose with the binoculars with him. And it was I wish I could have taken a photo of that, because it was one of the funniest images I've ever seen of this bigger gentleman with binoculars holding the tiny binoculars, holding them like this with his hands cupped to Sarah, basically saying, the government does not have your binoculars. Leave us alone and go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. They had to take a picture of me being handed back my binoculars after they wrote them off. And like, I need to also say, they inspected these binoculars for like 2 or 3 hours. Yeah. Like they were going through my binoculars. But
I can't imagine what they would do to a bigger binoculars, because those things are small.
I mean, I was reading that a lot of people had theirs taken away. Like, it's just a thing that they do. But yeah, no, mine were totally fine. But they It didn't help either that, this is like the final step. Like getting our binoculars back was the last step in coming into Nicaragua. Like we had the check truck, Kramer had been checked, our passports were done. We had gone through like a little bit of an interview, like all this kind of thing. I was just sitting in this man's office, like waiting for my binoculars. So I kind of had that like adrenaline happy, like we've almost made it through. Like I was real smiley and like being nice and like talking to the guys in the office because they were all super nice. And so when this guy came over and handed me back the binoculars, I had like this idiotic grin on my face. I was like, thank you. And like smiling and happy. But he was so serious. You could tell he was so embarrassed. He was just like, oh, whatever.
Just get him out of here.
But it looked like the picture, if you watch The Office, of like Michael Scott when he first starts at Dunder Mifflin.
Yeah.
And he's like shaking the boss's hand. He's got the mullet. Like that's exactly what I looked like in that moment.
Yeah. So border crossings, for us, they're never fun, no matter what country you're going to or coming from. But this particular day was just a border crossing for the, it made history for us. Like it was just a day.
But Nicaragua wasn't bad.
No, like Nicaragua wasn't bad.
We had friends who you could see it across the street actually from where we were, where they will X-ray your entire vehicle. Like they have this thing and it'll go over your entire vehicle looking for things that are hidden.
They'll look for the drone because we have a secret compartment in our truck.
We have a couple, yeah.
And I was like, maybe I could just hide the drone down there.
No, we would never do that though.
Well, but in my mind, I'm thinking, you're always thinking.
You're thinking like, what could I get away with?
Sarah's definitely the rule follower and I'm the guy. I'm like, hey, I kind of want to see if I can get past this. And
I'm not going to end up in Nicaraguan prison.
She keeps me in check. And so I'm thinking, hey, we could hide the drone in here. And she was like, absolutely not. They will find it. And they would have found it.
But we never would have actually done that because we are rule followers. Like we're guests in the country. We're going to abide by the laws. That's just part of it. But yeah, no, we have friends who their vans have had to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
Like multiple friends who have had to actually go through that. And they didn't even like bat an eye at us. They just are like, okay, cool.
Go on.
Welcome to Nicaragua.
And then let's talk about Nicaragua because we didn't stay too long in Nicaragua either because we had to get to Costa Rica to pick up our drone. So we only had a few days there. But Nicaragua was very interesting to me. It, the people, we met so many nice people there. And then we also met so many like cold people. And it wasn't that they were being rude, but it was just like, they're just kind of cold, not smiley compared to the rest of Central America. Sarah had a really bad interaction with another cop who said that he was going to throw her in jail.
I almost forgotten about that.
Yeah. And so that was interesting. But then at the same time, it had the prettiest beach we've ever been on.
It was like we just woke up on a deserted island. It was just, is it a desert island or a deserted island?
Both. Deserted island, I think.
Is it? That doesn't sound right. Anyway, it's like we just woke up in paradise. I mean, this beach, I've never been on a beach and had absolutely not a single piece of garbage on the beach. And then there were these rocks at both ends of the beach, just like this tiny little alcove.
It looked like Southern California almost with those rocks sticking out.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of something like San Diego, and you could like watch all the sea life. I mean, those rocks were just so alive with sea life. You could just stand there and watch all the little crabs scurry around, and there was no one there. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Best beach ever, and it was free to go. So Nicaragua was just kind of like this weird thing of like really high highs and really low lows for us. Like the border was pretty good. We went volcano sledding. It's one of the only places in the world where you can sled down an active volcano. And when I say this volcano is active, you
can still feel the heat off of it.
Yeah, but not only that, like it goes off, I think it's every 10 or 20 years.
Ew.
And they said it's expected to go off any day now. Like, so when we were there, guides are actually required this year because they don't want people going off onto the wrong trail. So some of the trails, we were walking up the volcano. I was like, oh, what's that trail down there? He said, oh, sometimes we take that one if it's a really windy day, but that trail's actually closed off this year because we're expecting this to go off any moment now, and that one's too close to the crater.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is real. Let's get on those sleds and start sliding down.
Gosh.
But that was so much fun. Like, that was a really cool experience that we got to sled down a volcano and then watch the most beautiful sunset over Nicaragua.
Cerro Negro, yeah.
Cerro Negro.
And our guides, we had actually hired guides, and you can hire the guides too. We'll put the link down below in the description. But these guides were so nice, and they gave us the history of how sledding down this volcano in Cerro Negro started off, and they even showed us this video of this French cyclist who went 110 miles an hour down this volcano, and then his bike essentially just exploded. It just
didn't explode. It just broke in two.
It broke into. It just disintegrated right there on camera, and he broke collarbone. Like they showed us all of this right before we were getting ready to sled, which was, it kind of scared me a little bit.
But it was a fun experience.
Yeah.
It really was. I mean, those guides, like even driving out to it, we were in this cool old, or actually it was a new troopy. It looked kind of like our truck, but it was a lot newer.
Yeah.
But we were sitting in the back and they'd point out like the different vegetation along the way. So we got to see like what was growing in the area. And it was just, we booked a sunset tour. So you hike up and it took us about 45 minutes to get to the top, depending on what it's like for you. It's about a mile to the top, but it is steep. You get up there and it's crazy windy. And then you like get in these coveralls. You put gloves and goggles and then even masks because the volcano rock is it's like gritty, sandy. And so it'll end up all in your teeth, even with the mask. Like I got to the bottom and Chris and I both had just like black all around our faces. We had gunk in our teeth. Yeah. I'm smiling. I've got, oh gosh.
I would have never thought about the mask, but when he handed it to me, I'm like, oh, thank you. I think like I just didn't think about it. And then I was so thankful he did hand it to us.
Yeah. It doesn't look as cool having a mask going down, but I was thankful. I guess you could do a bandana if you wanted, but we went down and let's talk about that for a second because most people, you can go up to like 60 something miles an hour. And these, I call them sleds, but they're just pieces of plywood with a rope on them.
Yeah.
And to go faster, you just kind of lean back. And then to go slower, you stick your feet out and you brake with your heels on either side of it. Yeah. That it's not real high tech, but it works. And it's really fun. But I was already nervous because you're up there and it's so steep. And then I got like 25% of the way down and I was getting my confidence a little bit. And then this girl goes flying past me. I kid you not. She was probably going at least 40 something miles an hour, which is fast on a sled. And I heard, and she like flew like several times, flipped, and I was like, are you okay? Like I asked her, I stopped and asked her if she was fine, and she was, but she was in a lot of pain. So after that I kind of lost my confidence again. But so Chris and I are both like a little bit lame. Like we were definitely like the 30-something-year-olds out there with some college kids going slow.
But we did it. We slid down an active volcano.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. And, like Sarah said, there's really high highs there. So this was a really high. But that next day we're leaving, I think it was Leon, right?
Leon,
yeah, Leon, like that's where you start to see another side of Nicaragua, and it was a little difficult to see there. It was one of the more harsher environments that we've been in just poverty-stricken environments, and so you kind of have to take that into consideration. I know a lot of people fly to Nicaragua and they'll go surfing and they'll go to these small little surf towns and they're beautiful and probably very touristy, which is great. But then there's another side of that, and that's what we were seeing at this point. We're like, oh wow, this is very, very poverty stricken.
I think we knew in our heads that Nicaragua was Nicaragua and Honduras are both less developed than the rest of Central America.
Yeah.
But Nicaragua, especially like we said earlier, has been communist in the last, since I was born or right before I was born, it turned. So, it's still pretty recent and they still battle with they're developing. And so it's constantly going through changes. And obviously that's, good and bad for people. And so you see that. And so this country is very much horse and buggy are just super common there. And I'm not talking giant Clydesdales. I'm talking little ponies.
And not like the New York, horse and buggy, you go around a tour of a city kind of thing. And they do have some of those in the bigger cities, but these horse and buggy, a work. Farmer. Yeah.
Yeah. They use them for work. And so you have to be really careful when you're driving because they do come out of nowhere sometimes. But you definitely see, Chris mentioned, the people weren't as nice there, but I shouldn't say as nice. They weren't as smiley. In Guatemala, people are kind of especially the indigenous people, they'll kind of look at you, but if you smile at them, they'll just smile huge right back at you. They're really kind and a little bit warmer, but I think they've seen a really positive aspect of tourism in their country over the last few years. And they're not as afraid of expats because they see that it can bring good and bad and they're still allowed to live their lives. Whereas Nicaraguans are still very much, they seem a little bit harder still. They've just gone through a lot of struggles. And so you see that. And so it made me feel unwelcome, but most people weren't actually rude. They were just really reserved, didn't really feel like having a conversation, didn't really want to take the time to say hi.
And I know that I just kind of blew past this story, but Sarah did get a bad interaction with a cop driving because she passed legally, but he was saying that she did it illegally.
Yeah, and I wasn't the only one. Like people were, as I was being pulled over on the side of the road, people were doing the same thing all around me. But he saw me, he like waved me down, and I knew it was a real cop, and so I had to stop. Like he had the real car and everything and the badge. And so I stopped, and I know he saw, like, this is easy. Well, he took my license, which stupid me should not have handed my license over. That's like rule number 1, never actually give them your license. Like, hold it.
Yeah.
He kind of ripped it out of my hands, took it, and he's like, I'm not giving you this back until you pay me. And I said, well, I don't have any cash. Like, I had just used up the last of our cash. We were on our way to Managua. We were going to get more cash out. And I think it worked out well that we didn't have any on us. So we said, look, I'll follow you back to Leon. You go with us. I'm not leaving you here with my license. Like, you can follow us or guide us, and then I will pay you. And finally, I will pay you, but you have to go with us. I'm not leaving you here. And he's like, no, I can't. Even though there's like 2 or 3 other cops standing right there. They totally could have watched his checkpoint.
He just wanted money.
He wanted a quick money. So I said, fine. Well, I'm not going anywhere until I get my license back. And so I turned the car off on the side of the road, and I just sat there. And we had our rear view camera on, and he went behind the car and called someone. I'm assuming it was the boss. And you could tell he was like shaking his head, and he kind of stood there. And then he came back around. He's like,
he didn't know we could see him in the rear view.
He didn't know, but you could tell he was told, you need to let them go. So he came back around. He's like, I will let you go. He's like, but next time I put you in jail.
He went like that.
He's like, I arrest you and put you in jail. I was like, okay. Bye.
See you later.
And I've never had a ticket or a wreck in my life. Like, it wasn't me trying to be disrespectful to the government official. I want to always say I was being respectful. I was being kind.
You care too much. Yeah, it's fine.
This guy was totally scamming. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know who he called. It may have been the boss. Maybe he really thought he could get a ticket out of me. I have no idea. But the way I see it is I didn't do anything wrong. Everybody else was doing the exact same thing. I think he saw American license plate.
Quick buck.
Yeah.
So our time in Nicaragua, like I said, was short. We went to the beach, this amazing beach, and just kind of chilled out for a second. And then leaving Nicaragua was an event in and of itself as well.
Well, let's talk about more of Nicaragua, because it has, we did Cerro Negro, and that was a really cool volcano. But they have some other ones that are supposed to be really, really pretty. But when we were there, it actually rained the whole time, and you couldn't really see much of the mountainscapes. And then the ones that you can hike to, they're the most famous ones to hike to.
Were actually active, weren't they?
1 or 2 of them were so active at the time they've been closed down.
Yeah.
So you couldn't hike up to it. So that was another one of those moments of like, well, I just timed this wrong. So we kept going, but we did end up rolling into like South Nicaragua. This is like right at the Costa Rica border. And we stayed there for a few days. Met this really nice New Zealand Kiwi family.
Yeah.
Had built their own little campground farm. They had a pickleball court there. They were having a pickleball tournament with all the locals.
They were just like, hey, it's gonna get rowdy here. Hope you're ready. And these people showed up for the pickleball tournament. And like I said, the beach there close to their house was just amazing.
Absolutely beautiful.
Breathtaking. I understand why people go there and surf, and to completely understand it. It was beautiful. And the price comparatively to a lot of Central America was it was much more affordable than say Costa Rica or even Guatemala sometimes. Things would cost maybe $2 or $3 US. Yeah, so things were considerably less in Nicaragua, which is not the same as Costa Rica, but we'll get there in another episode. But yeah, Nicaragua, I can see myself going back to Nicaragua and exploring some of the parts that we didn't get to explore.
There's certainly a lot more. Like the lake, there was this really cool island we want to go to in this lake, but the weather ended up being just so bad, and we had to get to Costa Rica. We said, we're just not going to do it. We're going to miss it. But this freshwater lake has this island in the middle. It's made up of 2 volcanoes, and that's the entire island. And so it's really popular. You can take your truck over if you're overlanding, but a lot of people will rent scooters over there, and then they can hike around the mountains or the volcanoes over there. It's supposed to be really like low key. I was really looking forward to that, but it just didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see myself going back and surfing there, because I thought that one beach, like that'll stick in my memory for years. I think it was so pretty. I just sat in the water one day, like Chris got stung by a jellyfish. I was sitting in the water just like a kid, just like playing.
She was having the time of her life, and I was over there struggling. I was like, this jellyfish got me. It was the first time ever, because my whole body went numb. I was like, what's wrong with me?
Your right leg or whatever. Yeah.
I was like, is this a stroke? And then, no, it was a jellyfish.
It was a jellyfish.
Yeah. So
how I didn't get stung, I don't know, because I was just sitting. I was laying in the water.
Yeah. You were having a good old time. And then from there, like I said, we went down to the border between Nicaragua and Costa Rica. And leaving Nicaragua was an event in and of itself, because essentially the guy, because we travel with our dog, we always have to get extra paperwork. And this is proven to be sometimes a little bit more difficult depending on where we're going. And for Nicaragua, you have to get another permit paperwork to exit with the dog so you can show Costa Rica. And the guy that was supposed to do this, that is a government official at the government office, decided to go home early on a Sunday. Which,
no, it wasn't even a Sunday. It was like a Friday or Saturday.
Yeah.
But we rolled in at like 3:30 p.m. Nowhere does it say they're closed on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. The guy, we get there and he's like, oh, he's already gone.
He's already gone.
You're going to have to come back tomorrow.
And so we
said, okay.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, we'll just leave and come back. But then we try to leave the border area, and the lady who is the gatekeeper for you to get to the customs office was like, you can't come back out. You can't come back into Nicaragua. And I said, well, they won't let us leave. And so we were stuck. And then Chris went inside. He's like, hey, I'm going to camp out here tonight because I can't leave, and I can't leave to go back in or to go to Costa Rica. And they're like, well, you can't camp here. Well, after Chris followed these employees around for about an hour, just sort of like looking lost.
I literally had, that John Travolta gif of like, he's just looking around, from whatever movie. That was me. Like I just kind of hovered.
He did.
Because I'm like, I don't know what to do. You won't let me camp here. We can't leave, and you're not going to let me go to Costa Rica. What do we do? And I guess I just finally wore him down. Like I wasn't even talking to him. I was just being kind of a dummy in the corner.
You're just trying to think of like, what do we do? Because they would not let us leave.
Yeah.
Finally, they were like, fine, we'll sign the papers. And they miraculously found somebody to sign the paper all of a sudden. And we got to leave. And then we got to Costa Rica, and it was dark by then, but the Costa Rica border was super easy. It was really easy to navigate. And then I was like really concerned about getting Kramer into Costa Rica. And the guy was just, yeah, welcome. Come on in. Like, you're fine. Like, you got everything you need. Yeah, Pura Vida.
Pura Vida, baby. So...
Oh man, I'm so excited to talk about Costa Rica in the next episode because I absolutely loved Costa Rica. It's kind of like one of those places like Hawaii where you hear a lot of hype about it. And I rolled in there the same way I did to Hawaii, and I wasn't sure if I was going to love it because there's so much hype around it. But spoiler, we did.
Yeah. So look, guys, we thank you for letting us just vent and talk about these stories.
This is gonna be our worst performing episode ever.
These border stories, like there's something that will stick with us forever. We're like, wow, I can't, like, it's sort of like you read it out of a book and I'm like, oh yeah, this was my life. I can't believe that this was real, but it was real. And if you're ever thinking about or wanting to do any sort of like overlanding travel like we have done, I highly encourage it. I think everybody should travel, and I think everybody should experience these things. It gives you memories, and you're able to remember the day like way better than what you would just sitting in front of the TV.
That's a good point.
And so I encourage you, get scammed in Honduras, or go to Nicaragua. Like,
be safe, but
be safe.
Put yourself in uncomfortable positions.
Yeah. So, because really, really, like, it makes you sound way cooler to your friends.
No, but you have a really good point. We've talked about this before, but like the hard days are the ones you remember the best. And I don't remember most of the days that we were in Nicaragua. I remember the beach really well, and I remember a few other things pretty well. I remember it, but I know those memories are going to fade, but I will not forget Honduras and crossing that border that day. But, lessons were learned. I experienced, scam, and as much as that sucks, and I hope nobody else has to go through that, I learned a valuable lesson. I learned more about how to spot it faster. I learned more about how to get out of the situation, how to say no and stuff like that. Like, it's lessons learned. Like, it's just part of it. So thanks for hearing us out on this. And maybe you gathered something. Maybe you learned something about scamming. Maybe you said, I actually want to go check out Honduras now because I just want to see what it's about. Like, it sounded just crazy enough. I want to go see it.
I'm going to prove them wrong.
I would actually really like to go to Honduras. That island in the Caribbean looks really nice.
Yeah, I would love that.
All right.
Guys, thanks so much for listening. And I guess we'll see you in the next one.